Okay.
Got it. Thank you. And welcome to our SWAT meeting for April 4th, 2022. I'm Karen Stepper and the chair for this year. We'd like to welcome all the people who are here and we will have them do self-introductions. So it is now 3 o'clock. Darlene, could you please confirm the quorum first before we do the self-introductions?
Yes.
And would you also make the notice announcement with respect to Zoom?
Yes, Madam Chair. So, okay, first of all, roll call. Mayor Soft.
Here.
Mayor Hudson. Hold on, people are still coming in. I'm sorry about that. Okay, Mayor Hudson. Supervisor Anderson. Mayor Geringer.
Here.
Vice Chair Worth.
Here.
And Chair Stepper.
Here. Do you have some more that have already just trying to sign in at this moment?
At this time, I believe I have let everyone. Let me just
Okay.
check. Yeah.
I think
everyone-
when we do the self-introductions, we may pick up a few other people before the end of that. So if you could go ahead and introduce yourselves, I'd appreciate it. So you probably don't have them in the same order I do. So
Okay.
please speak up. Darlene, you want to start?
Sure. Darlene Amaral. I'm the SWAT admin staff and 511 Contra Costa staff.
Caitlin?
Caitlin with the town of Danville.
I hope you just muted yourself, Caitlin. Well,
Sorry about that. I thought I went through. Caitlin with the town of Danville.
Renata?
Hi, Renata Sauce, council member and mayor at Moraga.
Amy?
Hi, Amy Worth, Orinda Council.
Andy?
Good afternoon, Andy Dillard, Town of Danville staff.
Teresa?
Teresa Geringer, Mayor of Lafayette.
John? John Hung?
Yeah, hi, good afternoon. John Huang, Director of Planning for Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
Thank you. Brian?
Good afternoon, Brian Bornstein, City Engineer San Ramon, and also the SWAT administrative staff.
Great, thank you. Dave?
Yeah, I'm here. Dave Hudson, Mayor, San Ramon.
Okay, you're now part of our quorum. Robert?
Hi, Robert Sarmiento, Contra Costa County staff.
All right. Drummond?
Drummond Buckley, Planning Director, City of Orinda.
Great, thank you. So, Siva?
Hi, Siva Natarajan, City of Orinda staff.
Great. Melody?
Melody Reeves, Director of Planning and Marketing for County Connection.
Celestine?
Hi, good afternoon. This is Celestine Doe from BART from Grant Advocacy, Grant Development and Advocacy.
All right, thank you for the extra information. Is there anyone else who has not been introduced? Please do so. All right, thank you. So we may still have some more people joining us for this meeting today. But I'd like to start the meeting by welcoming everyone and telling you, Darlene, did you give the Zoom meeting announcement?
No, I did not. So at this time, and Karen, please jump in if we are moving forward with keeping the SWAT meeting a Zoom until we receive word or information from CCTA. And I believe since we follow CCTA's meeting protocols, that's when we would say if we were going to be going back in person or not.
Okay, thank you, Darlene. I'll go ahead and go through the procedure. Assembly Bill 361 suspended certain provisions of the Brown Act, allowing public meetings to be held by teleconference as a precaution to protect everyone's health and safety of staff and officials and the public. Committee members will not be physically in attendance, but will be available here in this video conference. There will be no physical location for members of the public to participate in the meeting. but we encourage members of the public to access the meeting online using the web video communication application and/or to send emails to this organization. If you are submitting a public account comment via email, please do so by noon on Monday because we start, of course, meeting at 3 o'clock on Mondays. The committee meeting will be conducted on the web video communication platform Zoom. In order to view and participate, you can download Zoom from the website, and it is recommended that anyone wishing to participate download the process before the start of the meeting. All right. Any other questions, comments? Thank you. I'd like to welcome Candace Anderson, our supervisor here. Thank you.
I apologize for the delay in popping in from another meeting that's going on right now.
Nothing like overlapping meetings on
Well, and
Mondays especially.
It's a problem, and I'm hoping, did Teresa make it in here too? She was with me in the.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, she got here. Thank you. So are there any members of the public who would like to make a comment, or if there are, please raise your virtual hand on Zoom. Okay,
I do not.
seeing
see
none,
any.
then we will go forward with the board member comments. So just please, you can raise your real hand if you're on the committee here and you have a comment. Okay, seeing none, then we'll go on to number 4, the administrative items, and welcome Brian Bornstein again for taking charge of the administration of this organization. So thank you. Along with Darlene Amaral, who gets all these meetings set up for us. Thank you. Okay, if you don't have a report, Brian, then we will go to the consent agenda and look for item 5A, which is approval of the minutes for the meeting of February 7th, 2022. Are there any comments or questions? Is there anybody who would like to withdraw this item from consent? Otherwise, it's open for a motion.
Consent.
Okay, so we have a motion by, I think it was Dave Hudson, and second by Amy Worth.
Great.
I'm not positive if I said the wrong name
Good.
correctly.
You got it.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye at the roll call. Darlene?
Okay, Mayor Soff,
Yes.
Mayor Hudson,
Yes.
Supervisor Anderson,
Yes.
Mayor Garinger,
Aye.
Vice Chair Worth,
Aye.
and Chair Stepper.
Yes.
Great.
All right, thank
Passes
you.
6-0.
So it passes unanimously.
Yes.
And we can go to item 6A, which is our update on the policy framework for the One Bay Area Grant OBAG Cycle 3. The program in Contra Costa will be presented today by John Huang. He is the Director of Planning for CCTA, the Contra Costa Transportation Authority. So welcome back again, John. And I think it's a fairly lengthy PowerPoint that you have. So if somebody has a question in the middle of the PowerPoint, which I assume you will share with us, then please let me know, Darlene, if you see a hand raised. Okay, thank you. Welcome, John. John, you're still on mute.
It was a great speech.
Okay, start
Thank
it
you.
over.
I was trying to get my slides in order, but thank you again. Good afternoon, Chair Stepper and Commissioners. John Huang, Director of Planning for Contra Costa Transportation Authority. And thanks for allowing me to come back again and provide you an update of the information that we are developing and trying to finalize within the next week or so. Can you all see my screen?
Not yet.
Not yet, okay. Gotcha, okay.
It's coming up now.
Okay, great.
Mhm.
So I'll be going solo today. Colin is actually on vacation. So again, this is the One Bay Area Grant Cycle 3. One Bay Area Grant is the money that we receive from MTC, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, for federal SCP and CMAQ funding. This year, MTC has changed the rules slightly, so it's not going to be business as usual, similar to what you are in the city are used to in the past 2 cycles. And I have a slide deck here, which I'll go through to identify the high level regional MTC policy and how it trickles down to what we're trying to do here at Contra Costa County. Okay, so again, I mentioned the money is the federal funds, so there's going to be a required minimum match of 11.47%, and the estimated fund for the county and local program, which is for the 9 Bay Area region, is 340 million. The other half is actually for the regional programs, and right now we still are kind of vague about what MTC is developing for the region, because it does affect the programs that MTC is developed for the region, does impact what the locals are doing, and it gives another funding opportunity for local cities too. So that's why I want to bring that up. The money is for a 4-year period starting fiscal year 22-23 through 25-26. And the policy that MTC had developed really aligns up with their Plan Bay Area 2050 strategies and performance goals. As far as the regional policy, which I'll talk about first, MTC is really focusing on priority development areas and equity priority communities. So all the projects should be related to that, those communities. MTC has set a bar of 70% of the investment that, let's say for our county, 70% of the investment should be directed to or related to priority development areas or TRAs, transit-rich areas. So I'll go into that a little bit further as we define the program for the county. And as far as priority development areas, the project can connect PDAs or would be within a certain distance of PDA boundaries, or provide clear connections between PDA's implementation. MTC is also stressing and emphasizing active transportation, which is bicycling and pedestrian projects. And that includes Safe Route to Schools also. And again, these projects that eventually your city will be proposing will be heavily PDA related. And also MTC is asking cities as project sponsors to meet their policy requirements, which is the housing complete streets, safety plans, which is the local road safety plans, and also the payment management program. For Contra Costa County, the amount that CCTA receives for planning is about $4 million total, so roughly $1 million a year. So that means that the county local programs is $47 million. And then again, this is one of the first difference that MTC has said, is that instead of typically allocating the funds to the counties based on formula, typically road miles and population, MTC has established a nomination amount, which if you do the math, it's 100%, 120% of the target amount. So there's two terminologies there. The nomination amount of 56.775 million is 120% of 47 million. And again, I mentioned that there's no allocation this time because the federal FHW highway audited MTC, and they did not want MTC to allocate funds. And again, it goes down to CTTA and the county level where we can't allocate funds either. Again, I mentioned this earlier, the prioritization for our county is very similar to MTC, is that it's consistent with the Plan Bay Area 2050 and also meets the OBAG 3 program requirements. And actually these 4 bullet points is straight from the MTC sample template application. When we develop our application for the county, we want to include these 4 points just to make sure that we've captured the MTC categories, which MTC is going to be evaluating the projects once it gets elevated to the regional level. So eligibility is one. Deliverability, meaning that the project should be able to be delivered by no later than January 31st of 2027. Community support includes a lot of that the project has been vetted through the public, endorsed by business organizations, and is included in the community-based transportation plans if they're applicable. And also just re-emphasizing the PDAs, transit-rich areas, TRAs, and the priority production area, PPAs. Mouthful. So a lot of the projects has to be really associated with this, and the scoring criteria is going to be take these into consideration. Just continuing on the regional MTC policy, it's a 2-step evaluation process. So this year for OBAC cycle 3, CCTA will do our typical call for projects for half of the money, and the other half, CCTA is actually sponsoring a project, and I'll go into more detail a little bit later. But ultimately, CCTA will have a list of projects that we're going to be nominated to the region, and our projects will make up 75%. Our prioritization will make up 75% or points of the regional criteria, of the regional scoring evaluation.
Right.
And then once it gets to the MTC level, then MTC is going to take the projects that CCTA has prioritized and pit it up against the projects from the other 9 Bay Area counties. And at the regional level, CCTA or MTC is going to evaluate the projects based on a 25% of the scoring. And again, one of the policy at the regional level is MTC. Of course, I mentioned this earlier. They want 70% of the total investment for the region at 70%, and 25 million is slated to Safe After School, and at least 200 million regional wide is going to go toward bike and ped projects. So going back down to Contra Costa, so I mentioned earlier, there's 2 categories that we're looking at doing. CCTA is looking at is the first half of the $47 million is towards a smart signals project. This is a project that interconnect signals at various intersections along cities, towns, and the unincorporated areas for the whole county. And we're looking at using half of the money, 23.5% million plus the match towards that smart signals project, and CCA will be the project sponsor. And the other half of the money is the active transportation and safety. That part of the money, we're going to do a traditional call for projects where we ask the cities and jurisdictions to submit projects for consideration. And those projects will be scored based on this scoring criteria. I mentioned earlier, so with CCA being the project sponsor, we've actually been meeting with all the cities on right now to identify existing infrastructure, existing signals and equipment within the cities, and trying to get an idea of how much and how much equipment and how in quantity wise, how much we're looking at, how much $23 million can fund. So we have a few more cities left, and we're going to meet with all 20 jurisdictions. And again, I mentioned, if I didn't before, for the Smart Signals project, CCTA is asking that the equipment that are end up being located within the city's jurisdiction and the total amount that cost comes up ends up being, we're asking that the city provide the 11.47% match. That's good for the city that you're only providing the match, and you're getting upgrades, equipment upgrades, using other people's funds, which is the OBAC funds. The active transportation and safety, again, is to call for projects. We started looking at the 2018 bike and ped project list, but as we're going through the list and reaching out to all the cities, we realized that there's a lot of other projects that's been identified and vetted at the city and jurisdiction level that are not on this 2018 project list. So this will be a little bit more flexible when the policy actually gets released. Well, we're working with the cities to identify what the needs are as far as the bike ped projects.
All right. Are there any questions at this point about the framework before he goes on with the more specific projects of the regional and the local? Okay, then continue, John. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so Smart Signals, like I mentioned, we're going to be meeting at the end of this week or next week when we would have met with all the cities and the towns and the county to identify what's currently out there and what we need. So just to give to you a magnitude of how much it costs to really do a complete interconnect project, our ballpark figure is about $90 million. So this $23 million is really just a initial phase of the project. So we're going to target low-hanging fruit, so to speak, and upgrade the controllers, the software, and maybe some cameras, communication, wherever it's needed. And each city is going to be at different phases, different stages. Some may be more advanced than others. So we're gonna take all that into consideration. Again, the core of the project is to interconnect the signals along major corridor, and the major corridor can be and can be routes of regional significance. It can be the congestion management network, the CMP network that we monitor every two years, or it can be a corridor or intersection that the city, the jurisdiction, town deemed important to them. So it's not strictly just for the routes of regional significance. I think this is one of the difference that I've modified from the first presentation, that is really, as we're meeting with these cities, we might sit there with CCTA staff and our consultant might identify a route, but then when we met with the city, it turns out to be there's another party routes that we didn't know about. So it can be any of those three categories that I mentioned earlier. Again, I guess the whole theme of the Smart Signals, along with the bike and ped project, is to address safety, safety not only for the automobile and the driver, but the roadways in general for bicyclists and pedestrians, reducing collision and fatalities and incidents between automobiles and pedestrians and bicyclists. So that's the safety aspect of the Smart Signals project that we want to emphasize. And I mentioned some of the elements, which is intelligent transportation system base. We're going to look at upgrading controllers. Once those new controllers are installed and upgraded, it's going to be more robust and enable more applications to be added on to, including signal coordination, signal interconnect, and then video detection, maybe removing some of the loops detection and convert it over to video detection. and maybe installing emergency vehicle preemption or transit signal priority TSP, and trying to connect the communications, either copper or signal interconnect or fiber, which is the ultimate goal is to do fiber and enable and bring fiber back to the city hall so that traffic engineers and city engineers don't have to go out there to the cabinets to make adjustments to the signals, timing, and so forth. Again, the goal is to really emphasize safety on a multimodal level and also improve mobility on the corridor, on the route, on the streets, and to improve flow of the traffic and for all the modes involved. And this is ultimately when the system is built out, we want to look at including some or all of these components in this nice little chart here. And again, this is just a recap of the signals project addressing safety, mobility, and ultimately setting up the infrastructure for the future. Before I go into active transportation, I want to see if there's any questions.
I just have a minor one myself, because I thought it was great that you had that chart in there about the traffic collisions with people, with pedestrians, etc., and bicycles. So it was dated 2017. Is that being updated since COVID?
Was it on my slide, Chair Stepper? Was it on the slide somewhere, or?
It was in our packet.
Oh, in the packet, okay.
But I didn't have a page number on it, so
Okay.
I didn't know how to refer you to it.
Um,
But the whole chart was blue, and it's called Common Patterns of Collisions Involving Bicycling and Walking by Vision Zero. And I
Okay,
just-
maybe it's a little bit, maybe it might be a little bit later on in the presentation.
Okay, great, sorry, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go forward and just talk about the other half of the money, and this is the active transportation side, which is bicycle, pedestrian, and safe route to school. And
Here it comes.
and then we're looking at a call for projects, which jurisdictions are used to, and we're finally finalizing the application this week, and hopefully get it ready to go to the first committee, the TCC, in a couple of weeks. So the projects again looks at improving bicycling and pedestrian, and the projects needs to be it needs to be a minimum. We look at a larger size project, so it needs to be a minimum of $500,000, and we encourage bundling of projects. So we have, let's say, a curb return or like a wheelchair ramp. I'm just using an example, wheelchair ramp project, and those are pretty relatively nominal costs. You would want to kind of bundle multiple locations together to make it a sizable project. So that's just an example. Again, these projects would need to be located within that definition of proximate access to priority development areas. These are some of the collisions and patterns involved with bike and ped project. I think this is the one you're talking about, Chair.
Yeah, it is. I apologize.
No, that's okay. Yeah, so these are just shows you some of the issues and so forth that are associated with collisions, and I think it's when we issue the call for project, a lot of these criteria will be included in the application. So if there's a high a high number of incidents in a certain location, then of course that's going to be prioritized over other areas. But there's a lot of factors that's involved that's going to be taken into account when we actually evaluating and scoring the projects. And then you mentioned this one, the Switters, 2018, 17. I know Switter's a little bit behind. They make the data available a bit delayed. So I can look and check to see what the latest Switter's data is available. I know we're in 2022 now, so it might be a little bit later than the dates that we've indicated.
I wanted that to go to our new bicycle committee. So commission, thank you.
Okay, so as far as the active transportation and safety projects, all the jurisdictions, including BART and Transit Agency, are eligible to apply. And even the Parks, the East Bay Regional Park District is also eligible. We require a minimum of 11.47 match fund, and of course, so it'll be on a sliding scale. The more match that the city can apply can include, the higher the score will be. And there's a minimum eligibility mentioned $500,000, and this is not something that CCTA staff set, but something that that MTC wants. Again, if you're from your city works with federal funds, it's a lot of effort, a little bit more effort than local funds. So there's so everybody wants like a larger size project to make it worthwhile. The staff efforts and the efforts putting into getting that funds. We're setting a maximum of 2 project applications per city in town, with the county allowed up to 4 projects, just because of the 4 sub-regions. And as I mentioned earlier, projects can be bundled across, or can be bundled within a jurisdiction and across jurisdictions too. So if you have a neighboring city, town that you can work together with, that also works for the application. And I mentioned earlier, there's some housing and transportation policies and local road safety plans that cities and towns will need to complete. I think the local road safety plan, you have technically until December of 2023 to complete. Again, this is a local call for projects. When we were making the rounds and presenting this framework, a lot of feedback was why we did not set aside money for local streets and roads. One main reason is that we couldn't allocate local streets and roads money, so that historically every city and every jurisdiction will receive some money based on formula. So we veered away from that, and what we did was take into the comments into consideration. We modified the active transportation project a little bit to allow local streets and roads funding payment projects. So if a jurisdiction have a payment project, that you can a payment project with a bike and or pedestrian component, you can apply for that bike and ped project up to 100% of that portion for the bike and ped to cover part of the payment cost. I hope I explained that well, because I've been trying to make it clear. So for example, my example, let's hope it works here. So if a project's $1 million and the bike lane and some curb and sidewalk work is 250,000 of that 1 million, that makes the rest of the payment projects 750,000. So a city or a jurisdiction can apply for the full amount of the bike and ped portion plus 100% of that bike and ped portion. So 250,000 times 2. So the second 250, the second part of the second 250,000 would go towards the payment portion. So that's how we've set that up. We'll try to, if this isn't clear enough, I'll try to work on the language and the wording on the application and the call for projects to make it more clear. This is a schedule I think is a little bit shifted. So right now, I mentioned that we're putting the package together to go to the TCC Transportation Coordinating Committee on April 21st. That's still on schedule. And we plan to take this to the May 4th Planning Committee. That's on schedule with the May 18th board for adoption. And after the May 18th board meeting, once the package is approved, we will release that call for project by that Friday. So either the 19th or 20th. And we're going to give the jurisdiction ample time to put an application together. And we ourselves, CCTA, will need time to work with the cities on the Smart Signals project also. So right now, I think we're looking at the end of July. Apologize for the schedule being a little bit off, but we're looking for the end of July for the application to be due, and with the evaluation and the prioritization be done in the month of August. And we're aiming to bring the final project list to the CCTA board on September 21st, and then submit the final project list to MTC by the end of September. MTC will do their thing, and they will be announcing their project list in January of next year, and funds will be available for the successful projects sponsor in October 23. I will be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm not seeing any virtual hands, so I'll just, if we could take off the screen, Darlene, so we can see all the people in the room, I'd appreciate that. Okay, thank you. So anybody who would like to ask a question of John today? Maybe I need to look at the second screen too.
I don't
Okay.
see any
Is there any
hands raised.
from the public who has arrived who would like to ask a question? Okay, then I'll go back again one more time. Any questions? All right, thank you. John, thank you very much. Oh, good. Teresa.
Oh, you're going to say thank you, but I did want to say thank you to John and Colin for taking the input from our staff and from our previous meetings and trying to, I mean, not trying, but making it really clear and making it as, I don't know if fair is the right word, but as, you know, competitive for all of the jurisdictions in our area to be able to apply for the funds. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Teresa. John, for our follow-up request, it was if Switters has something more recent, I would appreciate seeing that on the collisions.
Mhm.
Secondly, was your clarity on how we get from 250 to plus 250 times 2,000, that's a total of 750,000 of funding. That's pretty awesome. And I think if you could do a diagram of an example of the amounts and where they each came from, just one screen and slide should be very helpful to us. And finally, that our time period for actually, hopefully you're thinking about these now, is May 4th to do on the end of July for these projects. So while that sounds like it's long enough, okay, I'm sorry, it's May 18th to the end of July. So now it's even a little shorter. So it's basically a 2-month period that you have to put these projects together, but it is a considerable amount of funding. So very much appreciate your time today, John, to come and meet with us. Anybody else have a question or follow-up? I think Teresa has her hand up.
Oh, Robert
Yeah.
Sarmiento.
Robert?
I just put my hand down. It's okay. Thank you though.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Looking one more time. Okay, not seeing any, then we will proceed to the next agenda item. And this one I'm a little more familiar with. Now, we're all familiar with all of these. It's very important that the next item on the agenda also be something that everybody in SWAT has had a chance to opine on. This has to do with the transfer of funds from one source to another, but within the same pocket of funding. And so I'm going to turn this over to Andy Dillard to explain how it needs to go through all these steps before CCTA can amend its documents by the end of this year. Okay, Andy, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, SWAT members. It's good to see you all. The item before you this afternoon is a request from the town of Danville to consider its request for reprogramming its appropriation of Measure J, Transportation for Livable Communities program funds. This request was generated by the town of Danville, and we were asked by the CCTA to go through this process. So by way of background, to give you a little bit of background on the Measure J TLC program, back in 2016, there was a call for projects by CCTA. And at that time, it actually was a coordinated call for projects that included both the Measure J TLC, the pedestrian, bicycle, and transit facilities programs, combined along with the One Bay Area Grant Cycle 2 Safe Routes to School programs in one coordinated call for projects. The pot of money that we're discussing today and that the town is requesting to reprogram is specifically the Measure J CCTLC funds. And that specific pot of money required review and approval by the SWAT TAC, the SWAT committee, and then ultimately, of course, onto the CCTA board for approval. This was I think this was considered the Cycle 2 release or call for projects that was back in 2017. The first cycle, I believe, was back in 2012. So this was Cycle 2. And as part of your staff report, there's the background and supporting documents of the action that SWAT took, and then the approval or the recommendation for the consideration of approval at the CCTA board. So the request for reprogram today, the town is requesting reprogramming of 1.5 million in its TLC funds from the Sycamore, or better known as Danville Park and Ride Expansion Project, which is currently in the Measure J strategic plan, into the Diablo Road Trail project, which in the strategic plan is known as the Diablo Road Circulation Improvements, although that name will change here in the next upcoming Measure J strategic plan update. So moving those funds, 1.5 million from the Park and Ride to the Diablo Road Trail. The reasons behind that is the town is elected to delay the construction of the Park and Ride expansion. It has been designed. That was completed a couple of years ago. But because of COVID, we've seen a dramatic drop in the use of that Park and Ride. It currently is mostly sitting empty. At some point in the future, the town will commence construction on that project. But since that time, the Diablo Road Trail project has been developed and has come into fruition to where we can now move forward with that project as a result of the approval of the McGee Preserve development, which is a 69 home development that is out in the east end of Danville. That project was actually approved in 2019 by the town. I think it says 2018 in the staff report, so that's a typo. It actually went out for referendum in 2020, but that failed. So the project is moving forward. So with that project, the town was granted the easement to finally build this Diablo Road Trail, which has been in existence in all kinds of town documents, including the current general plan, its parks master plan, its trails master plan, and now our townwide bicycle master plan. It's literally been a desire of the town to build this project for over 30 years. So we're excited that we're getting closer to that. The status of the project is that it currently preliminary design has been completed. It's currently in the environmental phase, and we're planning to complete final design in later 2022 and hopefully go out to construction in the spring of summer of next year. As far as the funding plan for the project, this 1.5 million will complete the funding plan for the Diablo Road Trail project. As you see in the staff report, there's several different funding sources that include local funds, a big piece of Measure J Major Streets Program 24C. There's already a pot of TLC money that's in there from the first cycle, and that was used to conduct a feasibility study back in 2018. And last year, we were awarded TDA funds to build a signal crossing that will connect the existing Diablo Road Trail with this new nearly 1 mile segment of trail that will ultimately connect to this new subdivision and will connect to areas east of Danville, including Mount Diablo State Park, which probably, as everyone knows, is a highly coveted and desired destination and route for our bicyclists to get to the mountain. So with that, CCTA is asking us to come back to SWAT to get your concurrence for this reprogramming request. And if SWAT's desire is to forward this on to CCTA, they will take this to their planning and board ahead of a Measure J strategic plan amendment, which I understand will be coming in June or July of this year. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I just wanted to clarify what you had said earlier to me, Andy, that the 70-30 split on the funding for this type of funding, that we are still in the same category. So we are simply moving it to a different project that's needed now desperately by anybody who comes off El Cerro or Sycamore and goes out to go up Mount Diablo every weekend and down Green Valley Road. So it will be appreciated by the entire region because they are there every weekend. So of course we have our riders that ride every day, but if anybody have some questions for Andy, I'd appreciate hearing what they are. And
so as of right now, Supervisor Anderson has her hand raised.
Okay. Candace Anderson.
And mine is less of a question. I think I was going to comment that this is very typical of a shifting money from one project around to another for a city based upon the timing and the availability and the need for it. This is a project that will definitely benefit unincorporated Contra Costa County as well, particularly the community of Diablo, that has very strong concerns about the safety of Diablo Road and particularly the pedestrian bicyclist conflict. And the road is not one where you could just widen it and add these needed improvements. So having this trail is going to be really important. And so given our past history of the willingness to allow an agency to move money from one project to another, I am supportive of it and don't have questions because I've been peppering poor Ty. I think Andy was off last week, so he didn't get my questions because I was getting a lot of questions from my Diablo constituents who have a lot of concerns about the safety of that road. So, which is primarily, controlled more by the town than by the county, other than some small segments. But I really think this will be very beneficial to the community.
Yeah, thank you, Candace. Diablo Road is one of those roads that changes who owns which half of the road and all the way across, up and down. And so we have two other people who had their hands up, Renata and then Dave.
That was Amy.
I think Amy's got
You
her
guys go ahead.
virtual hand.
Go ahead, I'll follow.
Oh, apologize.
Dave, you want to
Okay.
go?
No, I was just going to say, Andy, I'm not sure I caught all that. Could you repeat your report or just move the item?
He's
Whatever
not.
you like, council
We've
member.
heard you before, Dave. We don't take that seriously. Okay, Renata.
Thank you, Karen. So Andy, if I'm understanding this correctly, basically this is just taking money that's already been appropriated and designated, and due to changed circumstances, which were unanticipated at the time of the original allocation, it's being shifted to something that seems more necessary and appropriate under current circumstances. There's nothing more to this than that. Is that right?
That's right.
Correct. That's
Okay. And what are you guys going to do about the park and ride? Are you just going to mothball that?
at some point we will do the full project where we'll expand the parking. That was the primary piece of that project, was expanding the parking spaces from, I believe, from 240 to 360. There's a whole lot of other elements with that project too, such as EV parking, bicycle parking, and connections to the trail. And I know that our council is going to be talking about this project coming up in our budget study sessions, but we may move forward with a piece of that will provide that new connection to the trail, at least to do a portion of that. I don't want to speak to that too much since that's in our engineering department's hands, and they'll be giving an update to our council on that coming up. But hopefully within the next, 3 to 4 years, once that parking lot starts getting the usage that it used to pre-COVID, it'll be more of a desirable project to do again. But as I mentioned, currently that project is still, or that parking lot is still sitting empty, which I think all of us with park and rides can attest to.
Okay.
Thank
you.
Thank you for that nice summary, Renata. And Andy's always making the point that we're going to have a connection to downtown. There are a lot of bicyclists that come in, as you all know, in your towns on weekends. So it will provide a connection someday. And Andy's suggesting maybe there's other sources before people go back and let us know what their desires are. Because right now, nobody knows who's staying at home and who's staying partly somewhere else. Jobs are so much in flux. Amy Worth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question. I know that you had a narrative description of it. Could you just remind us, Andy, what is the length of this particular part of this access to Mount Diablo State Park and through Danville and through unincorporated Contra Costa County? I mean, I know Danville, I know Diablo Boulevard, but can you just explain how far it's going to go? And
Sure, great question. So I have a whole slide deck I'd love to show, but I think we're short on time. But basically the summary or the Cliff Notes version is the new trail segment that the town wants to build is 0.9 miles long.
Okay.
The existing is 0.5. And then a third segment, which is going to be built by the developer, is 0.7 miles. So overall, it's going to be a 2.1 mile contiguous network when it's complete.
Great. Perfect. So that will be just sort of from the town up. The other piece of it is in the future from, say, the park and ride or wherever what was the other part you were talking about accessing to downtown? Is that a different trail, or you're talking about the same one, just coming from the east to the west?
So from the downtown to the trailhead itself existing, we actually completed, it's not a class 1 trail, but we completed extensive class 2 buffered bike lanes and green bike lanes from the downtown to that trailhead a couple years ago, also with TDA funds. So that's kind of like the other gap that was completed as far as the connection for bikes go. Perfect.
Well, that's great, Andy. Thank you very much for that description. And I think I totally understand Danville saying what's the highest and best use of current dollars. And we're, the same goals, really, getting people out of cars into transit or into carpooling or bike and pedestrian. So I think it makes a lot of sense. This reminds me, we have this SWAT TDM, we have our SWAT programs budget coming up, and it would be productive, I think, to take that same look at some of the funding that we're providing various TDM programs to make sure that the ones that are actively used, great, but if we have ones that are not being utilized, we might want to be looking at how to, repurpose some of those dollars in the short run. So thank you. Thanks, Andy, for that update. Thank you.
That was a great comment, Amy, about going forward, because if we're not doing the most important things that are current, then it doesn't support CCTA's role. And that's important going forward for funding for all of us.
And exactly, Madam Chair. And I also think that it is so difficult and challenging to get the kind of funds that we need for the bike and pedestrian investments. So, we're all scraping the back of every drawer to find every quarter to be able to do these projects because they're so, so important. So thank you. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. I'm not seeing any more hands. I'm going to look one more time across these screens, and otherwise, Renata, I
Actually,
think you asked if you could make the motion.
Madam Chair, we do have a hand raised from.
Oh, do we have a member of the public to
public?
make it?
Yes, yes. Bill Keeshan,
Bill
his
Keeshan.
hand is raised.
Mhm. All right. Welcome, Bill. Thank you for coming today to our meeting.
Bill, you're on mute.
That's all right, but you still have 3 minutes for not mute. So
Good work.
please join us.
Great. Andy, it would be great to hear. It does seem to make a lot of sense, and the bike trail is near and dear to my heart. So I'm really actually glad to hear that. But I was just wondering if you could offer some insight on maybe not just this park and ride, but all the other park and rides. Are we looking to maybe do a study on how they can be repurposed? I imagine traffic's going to never go away, but that they could be incorporated into a more bike-friendly kind of future, with potential charging stations, refreshment stations, things that will help bicyclists as they take these long journeys up and down the Iron Horse Trail, to the extent that these park and rides are accessible. And I don't know how many are, but have we considered ways that we can maybe expand the purpose of these very valuable pieces of land that are used a lot during the weekdays, but not so much on the weekends?
Thank you for your comments and questions, Bill. Andy, did you want to address that? And I think Brian had a comment as well.
Yeah, actually, I would like a comment kind of Bill, you really hit the nail on the head. My comment was actually related to that the timing of transferring the projects actually works well, because the CCTA Innovate 680 has a composite of projects to really improve the 680 corridor. One of which of the 6 is these shared mobility hubs. So they're analyzing right now this whole corridor, and they're delegating locations, their shared mobility hubs. It just happens to be that the Sycamore Park and Ride is one, and in San Ramon we have the Bollinger Canyon Park and Ride, and we also have our transit center. So along the corridor, they designate these, and they're really creating guidelines. And it's funny you hit on all these things. That's exactly it. They'll have all these amenities in a place where you transfer. It's multimodal, where you come in on your bike and there's Wi-Fi, and you can sit down and you can take a bus, and they'll have all the technological advances, a bike fix-it station to fix your bike. So all these elements are coming into play right now as they finish this document. So to me, the timing works well, because if you table this project and pandemic and impacts, as it comes back online, then all these guidelines will be more married and set. And when you do the project, then you can add all those in, and you will have a good hub that's multimodal. And exactly what you're saying, we need that. And that's the direction it's going in. So that is what we want. We want these hubs spread out in the corridor that's really multimodal, more inclusive of bikes and scooters and walking and billboards that say when buses and other things are coming. So it's very dynamic, it's exciting, and it's just one of 6 implementation measures to really help relieve congestion and convert people onto multimodal transportation instead of just using a car. So hopefully that answered most of it, but great timing, because I was going to elaborate on the whole point of, I think the timing works well with delaying this hub, because they're creating guidelines. So if you move forward on it, you might be behind and go, oh shoot, we didn't implement this and that because the guidelines weren't quite set. So I think the timing works well.
Andy, did you want to answer then, Mr. Keeshan?
I think Brian hit it on the head. Thanks, Brian. Yeah, it's
Okay.
totally agree with that. With Innovate 680 and the Smart Mobility Hub effort that's just in its infancy here, we may have opportunity to implement more of those types of facilities and features that those things may have. So, yeah, thanks, Brian.
Dave Hudson.
Yeah, actually, that was one of the next, we look for these next pots of money, and mobility hubs was one of them. I don't know if Amy was at the meeting when they brought up mobility hubs, and I thought I was the only one that caught it, and Sam Licardo and Jesse Arakeen had the same idea. We all want the millions. Once you get money, you can do a lot of things, and mobility hubs has moved to the front of the class. I mean, a lot of people realize this is the future. So we'll see if we get the money to do it. Great ideas. What is it? Financing without funding is, or no, I won't go through Abrams cliches there, but funding is going to be a big part of this.
All right. Thank you. So I'm not seeing any other hands. Are there any other members of the public who have raised their hand, Darlene? Okay.
No, I do
Then,
not see anything.
again, I thought that Renata asked if she could do the motion, so I'll go back to you, Renata.
I think Dave did, but I'm happy.
Second.
I'm happy to do.
I
was
second
that-
Renata's motion.
Okay.
Do you need anything than moving approval? Do you need any specific language?
Well, we do have it here in front of us, so I can go back and
I
read it
don't.
if you'd like. This is the request to reprogram the town of Danville's appropriation for Measure J Transportation for Livable Communities program funds and forward a request to the Contra Costa Transportation Agency, CCTA, for a required amendment to the Measure J strategic plan. Thank you for that.
So moved.
Okay, so it's been moved by
Second.
Renata and seconded by Dave Hudson. Are there any other discussions? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, would you please do the roll call, Darlene Amaral?
Yes. Mayor Soft,
Yes.
Mayor Hudson,
Yes.
Supervisor Henderson,
Yes.
Mayor Geringer,
Yes.
Vice Chair Worth,
Aye.
and Chair Stepper.
Yes.
All right, that passes.
Okay.
6-0.
All right, well, those are our two regular agenda items. We're trying to get Amy to her next meeting, but anyway, that said, we will go back to the written communications that you've all had in front of you from all of the regional transportation planning committees. Are there any questions or comments? No, seeing none. Then on the next agenda, perhaps we'll be able to confirm a little bit more about what's happening on Zoom versus in-person meetings. So don't ever come to a meeting without checking your agenda in the future, because every committee is determining these separately. Is there any comments that you want to pass on to the authority when we discuss this?
Well, I like to pass on. It's my preference, just, even before COVID, we have such a hard time because we are so spread out with the La Marinda folks either getting stuck in traffic on their way home or the Danville folks getting traffic on their way up, depending upon who's hosting the meeting. So my preference is, as long as possible, to keep these meetings remote and maybe say quarterly we'll meet in person, assuming the Brown Act gives us that discretion. And of course, there's, I think, 2 bills pending right now that might give us that ability. So I would just like to say my preference is to keep it remote as long as possible, just because I think it works so much better with our very busy schedules and our remote work locations.
I think it just absolutely works for SWAT. As simple as that. I think you said it perfectly, Candace. It's just, I mean, if we ever get back to the congestion we had, I don't know how Moraga ever made it to a meeting in San Ramon. It's just.
It's hard. Well, and we were moving toward, pre-pandemic, letting people call in anyway. So I think there are ways that we can, again, I don't want to ever, I want to make sure we can sort of do a hybrid so we can have public participation remotely, which makes it a little bit more challenging if you're doing live, but hey, if we can keep doing it remote, I think it works really well.
Okay. So we will probably discuss this more thoroughly next time. So keep in mind what your comments are and what you're doing with your other agencies would be very helpful for us to know too. And I think you're reflecting that right now, both of you. So
Erin?
thank you. Amy Worth?
I just wanted to clarify, if I recall, and I know Teresa and Dave probably have better memories than I do, but I think that the authority discussed it, since we are a piece of the authority, we're kind of governed by what
Yes.
we decide, to wait until June for any kind of decisions.
Good.
Correct.
Relative to,
Okay.
yeah, so, okay, good.
But we as a SWAT community might have some things we want to pass on to the authority for its consideration. So
We got
that's why I
great
just want you to-
representatives, our two reps there, yep.
So we've
Yeah.
got two visions already that are looking for the ease of being able to have the meeting and make it also more easy for the public to join. Amy,
wonder-
do you have more?
No, I'm just hoping that, I think that there's also an advocacy effort going on in Sacramento to be able to enable committees to meet remotely, but I'm not sure where that's going. We could check with Sam.
Well, I
I'll
can
just
tell you
add,
that
I
we
hope I don't
supported
ever
Lee.
have any more of these quarterly meetings, which I have again this Wednesday and had last Friday, where the only item on the agenda is to renew the ability to have a Zoom meeting.
Yeah.
And I look at 20 people on the Zoom call and I felt, what amount of time? But at least it was only a short time because we were on Zoom. All right, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate you coming to our meeting and have a great weekend and a great week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. And thank you, Darlene, for getting everything on,
Yeah, no problem.
watching everything. Appreciate it.
All right.
Okay. All right.
See you in May.
I'm sorry, I just saw Brett Swain was here and we hadn't had him checked in, so.
Yeah, I noticed he came in. So I
Okay.
mean, I have him on the,
You do. Okay,
Darlene
sorry,
left
I
again,
hadn't.
I allowed him in.
I got my
recognize his
notice
jelly
early,
bean.
Darlene, so I was good, but I got a phone call and that took longer.
Oh, it's okay. It's all
It's
right.
okay.
It's a contractor thing.
Appreciate you being here, Brian.
Okay,
Thanks,
thanks.
Brett. Thank you.
All right. Well, see you later.
Okay, we're leaving. Have a good day.
You too.